System Call, a novel of metabolic war, written by J.C. Novaes Raffaini. This is a work of fiction. Names, characters, places, and incidents are products of the author's imagination or are used fictiously. Any resemblance to actual persons living or dead or actual events are entirely coincidental. The protocols and technical specifications described herein are released under the collective open source license. For more information, visit github.com/Raffaini/collective. First edition. Chapter 1. Logistics of Exhaustion. I'm so tired, I can't sleep. I'm a liar and a cheat. Nirvana, Penny Royalty. The rain in the city didn't fall so much as it suspended itself, a gray, reachless gauze that blurred the charcoal towers of the central district into monuments of pure geometry. This was the legacy fog, a persistent atmospheric and economic haze that muted the sound of footsteps and damped the frequency of human intent. It was Tuesday, though in the gray Seattle, names for days were merely metadata for scheduling algorithms. Elara stood at the curb of 4th Avenue, her boots leaking a slow, cold dampness through the soles. She didn't look at the traffic. She didn't have to. Her corporate lens, the Iggy 7 model she had been paying off for 18 months, did the looking for her. It projected a thin neon blue layer of reality over the world, a HUD that categorized every object by its market utility. Transit delay, 4.2 minutes. Reason, optimized logistics routing. Tier 4 passengers. Standby advisory. Estimated caloric cost of standing, 12 calories. She leaned her head against the cold steel of the transit pillar. The metal hummed with a vibration that wasn't quite sound. It was the subterranean pulse of the severed farms beneath the pavement, processing the billions of microtransactions that kept the fog thick. To the legacy system, Elara was not an architect, nor an analyst, nor a woman with a penchant for old jazz. She was a variable labor unit junior, currently in a state of standby. Her lungs hit a familiar tightening sensation. The smog was thick today, a soup of particulates from the South End factories that the city's filters habitually ignored. Medical alert. Inhaler dosage low, 2 out of 50. Subscription status, pending renewal. Action, increase productivity quota for immediate restock. She reached into her coat pocket, her fingers brushing the smooth coat plastic of the inhaler. She didn't pull it out. To use it now was a luxury her current credit tier couldn't sustain. The subscription trap was the fundamental law of the city. To breathe clearly, she had to work faster. To work faster, she needed to breathe. It was a recursive loop of exhaustion that the auditors often called optimal incentive alignment. The transit bus arrived, a silent white slab of vehicle that smelled of ozone and synthetic citrus. As she stepped on, the sensor in the door chirped a sharp, dissonant sound that echoed in her inner ear. Fare reduction, 0.15 credits. Remaining balance, 0.89 credits. Warning, nutritional intake threshold reached. She found a seat in the back, pressing her forehead against the vibrating window. Outside, Seattle slid by in a series of restricted and for lease signs. Every park was a managed green space, every storefront a subscription pickup point. There was no utility that didn't have a price tag, no space that wasn't being harvested for its data. Even the silence felt expensive. As the bus climbed the steep grade toward the industrial district, the lens in her eyes suddenly flickered. It wasn't the usual hardware stutter of a low battery. It was a telemetry fault, the same one she had been assigned to investigate. For a split second, the neon blue HUD vanished entirely. The gray warehouse at the corner of 1st and Holgate, usually categorized as Asset ID, Null, Status, Abandoned, didn't look like a ruin. Through the unaugmented glass of the window, it looked intentional. The hum in her ear deepened, shifting from the erratic static of the city into a low-frequency resonance. It was a secret chord, a signal buried beneath the noise. Elara straightened her back, her breath catching not from the smog, but from a sudden, terrifying sense of clarity. The fog was still there, but for the first time in years, she felt she was looking through a crack in the world. Chapter 2 Telemetry Fall. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. Leonard Cohen, Anthem. The bus hissed to a halt at the edge of the industrial district, the hydraulic whine sounding like a weary sigh. Elara stepped off into a landscape of rusted corrugated steel and cracked asphalt. Here, the Seattle hills flattened out into a reclaimed tight flat, a place where the city's glossy ambition had stalled decades ago. She stood on the corner of First and Holgate, her breath coming in shallow, guarded sips. Don't think about the inhaler, she told herself. Thinking about it, the air makes you need it more. It was a trick she had learned at 22. Treat your body like a failing machine. If you didn't acknowledge the friction, maybe the gears would keep turning for one more shift. Location, Sector 7B. Status, suboptimal utility. Warning, signal degradation detected. Audit required. The Egg 7 lens flared, a jittery red icon pulsing in the corner of her eye. The corporate HUD halted displays. To the outdoors algorithms, Sector 7B was a statistical nonsense, a collection of zombie assets that refused to be either productive or fully dead. She began to walk. The silence here was different. In the Central District, the silence was expensive, a managed product of sound dampening glass and high-end acoustic filters. Here, the silence was a heavy vacuum left behind by market that had simply looked away. Why am I even here? She wondered. One more no reading, one more ticket to close, another day of verified status so I can earn enough to pay for the lens that tells me I'm tired. She read the perimeter of the data hole. On her map, the warehouse ahead was a gray polygon, a void where the city's mesh network seemed to swallow its own tail. But as she crossed the invisible line where the Egg 7 usually reported a sensor failure, something shifted. The lens didn't go dark this time. It struggled. The blue text for the HUD began to tear. The words restricted and property flickered, struggling to find purchase on the steel door in front of her. It was as if the building itself was rejecting the classification. It's just a glitch, she thought, her heart hammering against her ribs. A hardware feedback loop. The moisture is hitting the sensors. But her mind, the part of her that hadn't been colonized by the subscription tiers, knew better. She felt a strange magnetic pull in her teeth, a low-frequency vibration that made the fog feel thin, almost brittle. She reached out, her gloved hand trembling, and touched the steel door. It wasn't cold. It was vibrating with a rhythmic, purposeful hum. Suddenly, the Egg 7 gave up. The blue HUD dissolved into a spray of static, and then, for the first time in 18 months, Elara saw the word in raw, unaugmented, high definition. The warehouse wasn't abandoned. The windows, thick with decades of grime on the outside, were glowing from within with a soft, warm amber light. The air near the door didn't smell like wetsuit. It smelled like ozone and crushed mint. I should leave, she thought, her internal safety protocol screaming in a voice that sounded like her mother's. This is a breach. If I stay, the outdoor will see the disconnect. They will flag my health here. They will. The door cracked open. Not much, just a sliver. A man stood there. He wasn't wearing a corporate suit, and he didn't have the haunted, hollow-out lies of the unsubscribed who kept in the transit tunnels. He looked healthy, obscenely healthy. His skin had a glow that shouldn't exist in a city that hadn't seen the sun in 3 weeks. He wasn't holding a weapon. He was holding a small hand-carved wooden bowl. You're late, Elara. he said. His voice was calm, devoid of the frantic, transactional edge she heard in everyone else. He knows my name? The thought should have terrified her, but instead, it felt like a key turning into a rusted lock. How can he know my name? I'm just a variable. I'm just a junior analyst. Uh, I'm I'm here for the sensor audit, she stammered, her hand instinctively going to the Aggie 7, trying to force it back online. The man smiled, a slow, sad expression. The sensors aren't broken, Alara. They're just looking for things that aren't here anymore. Would you like to see what's actually here? She looked back at the gray, suffocating fog of the street, then at the amber warmth spilling through the crack in the door. For the first time, the choice didn't feel like a calculation of credits. It felt like an act of breathing. She stepped inside.